So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the changing of the filters, the CTOQ filters, the MAQ15 filters, and the CTOQ post filter. Most important thing to remember is prior to changing out any of the filters is to move the service valve into a bypass position. This will give you continuous flow to the coffee, ice, and espresso, so there's no downtime. Always recommend using a small clean towel to put underneath the first CTOQ. When you go to change this filter, all it is a sanitary quick change. It turns to the left, it'll stop, and then you just work the filter down out of the system and it'll come down. You'll get a little bit of water there, but it'll only be a few drips. You take your new filter comes back in, and the tabs you'll see, this filter will only go in one way, so don't try to force it. Line it up where the tab moves in. As soon as it pushes up all the way, turn to the right, and you're done. You're going to do the same with the second CTOQ all the way down. New one comes in, sets back in the same way, and once again, don't try to force it, pushes up all the way to the right. Then you're going to move on to the MAQ15 filter. This is the mineral addition filter. Same way with that. Make sure your hand is underneath to catch any excess water. Turn to the left, work that down, and they'll come out. You'll notice when you take the MAQ new one to go back in, it's going to be very, very heavy. It's typically going to be very light when you take it out because all the mineral addition that's in the filter has been dissolved. So hold on tight. This is a heavy one. Put that all the way up into the head once again. Line it up. As soon as it's in, all the way to the right. Now you have your 3 CTOQ filters that are already set up and ready to go. Now, before we put the unit back into service, there's one other thing we have to do. We have to take the line off of the tank. So your system is either going to be a standard system, which has the white buffer tank on top, or it's going to be a high flow system like this one in the picture that has the large blue buffer tank and doesn't have the white one on tank. The system is exactly the same. So what you need to do is remove this line, which is the product line. So that's coming from the RO system. This has a quick connect valve on here, and I'm going to show you how to remove that. This is what we call a John Guest quick connect fitting. You'll see the blue line goes into the white collet and then into the black valve. This little collet on the outside needs to be pressed in with both fingers. So the best thing to do is take your index and middle finger, push that towards, put your thumb behind the valve, that supports the valve, and you press literally against the black valve. With your other hand, you push towards the valve, and then as you're holding the valve, the line will pull out from the valve. So that's a quick disconnect. When you're putting the valve back in with the tubing, you make sure the tubing is nice and straight, goes into the opening, it'll stop, then you push in a little further and it'll lock in. So it's in, so once again push on the collet, tube towards, and then pull out, and that'll come right out of the valve just like that. Okay, once the line is off, then what we're going to do is you want to have a pitcher or glass or something where you can run this water in. The reason you're disconnecting and running this water in is because the mineral addition filter, because if it's mineral, the water is going to come out white and cloudy. So we don't want that going into the tank. That's why we want to flush that out. So once you have the filters on, you're going to go from the bypass position slowly down to the service position. You'll hear the water start to go through. It'll take a minute or so for it to work itself through the new filters and the MAQ filter. You'll hold that over the glass, and then within a minute or so, the water's going to start to come out. It's going to have air bubbles in it. It's going to be cloudy and white. You typically want to run that water until the water is free of air and free of any white or film or cloudiness to the water. Once that is done and the filter is flushed, then you can go back to the filter, or the hose can be put back into the valve. And once again, you just line that up. It's very important that it stays straight. Goes into the John Guest fitting, it goes in a little ways and it'll stop. And then you just push a little further and it'll go right into the valve. You can pull back just to make sure it's locked into place.